so today we're going to be talking about summer leasing, trends. My name is Andrew Cederland. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Conversion Logics. And Joe, you can introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Carino. I am the Chief Revenue Officer here at Conversion Logics, and very happy that you've joined us today. We look forward to it, and hopefully some nice takeaways for you throughout the presentation. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome.
Stop that.
A little bit about us at Conversion Logics. I know that many of you have obviously been on all these webinars before, so this is not new, but we're a digital marketing and lead generation company, a software company based out of Seattle and Austin, Texas. We have people all over the country. We've been really focused for the last 10 years driving qualified traffic to our clients' websites. And then now we've developed tools to help convert those users. It's been really cool to see a lot of the online conversion opportunities come about over the last couple of months. Obviously, it's been an interesting couple of months and definitely an interesting last week or so. I hope everyone's staying safe, and our heart goes out to all those people who are involved in the various things that are happening. It's been a very interesting season, but there's been a lot of shifts happening that I think will probably remain permanent as we kind of go in and find new shopping habits have emerged, and I think a lot of those we'll see them continue to change, and they'll actually stick. We're going to be running through a few different things. We're going to talk about state of digital marketing like we normally do. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the seasonal trends versus the 2020 trends and kind of chart the differences on the graphs, looking at 2019 versus 2020. And then talk about capitalizing on these new trends. What are you going to do? The new trends being, that there's a huge amount of, more people browsing online right now. And then also there's more people taking online action than ever before. So what are you going to do to capitalize on that? And then finish up with a few tips of here's some things that can help, just make the most of your campaigns that you've got running right now. So we'll kick it off with our tried and true state of digital marketing, looking at some of the week over week changes. Organic traffic is about flat. Paid traffic is up a little bit week over week. And then when we look at the overall 12-week landscape, and I think I kind of teased this on our last webinar, is I had a feeling we were going to get finally past the point where the traffic has now surpassed what it was pre-COVID in the 12 weeks prior. And so that has happened. We're at organic traffic is a 1.7% increase. And then the paid traffic over that same time period has been up 21%, which is absolutely massive. And that's part of some of the changes that we saw this year versus last year. It's just a huge amount of increase in, paid traffic available. Looking at channel performance week over week, up across the board. Paid search was down a little bit, but not much. We're still, spending a lot more time on social media. I think a lot of the, recent events of unfolding across the country have really caused people to spend a lot more time on social media than ever before. Looking at 12-week channel performance, this is, sort of from when COVID started until now versus the 12 weeks prior to COVID. You can see the dates there at the bottom, March 9th through May 31st. Versus December 16th through March 8th. And just huge amount of just overall increases across the board. And again, this kind of speaks to people are spending a lot more time online, and digital marketing has been definitely a benefactor of that, in that we're able to drive more people than ever before to our clients' websites. This chart shows a comparison of our Conversion Cloud leads that we've gotten for clients versus store visit conversions. Obviously, even with I was actually expecting there to be a little bit of an uptick or slowdown, but this week, just because some communities have started to open over the last couple of weeks, but it seems like people are still opting for virtual tours over in person. And so you can see that the overall leads online continue to increase. We're seeing both leads per company, per community that we work with accelerating inside the platform, as well as overall leads. I think we drove in May I think it was 18,000 leads in May across all of our all the companies on our software, and across all verticals, multifamily, automotive, but multifamily in particular has seen huge increases in online leads. Uh, this is this week versus the last week, about a 10% increase in conversion cloud leads that we saw through our platform. This is looking at goal completions over time. So this is kind of measuring the quality of the traffic. It's one thing to get quantity, which is always great, but it's nice to get quality as well. So looking at overall goal completions, we're seeing them continue to rise up, and it's amazing. It kind of reminds me of the stock market when you're looking at such a close micro view and you see this giant cliff. And if you go back and watch any of the old webinars, it was, man, the drop off was dramatic. And then when you zoom out over time, you go back to the 2008 financial crisis and you see these crazy dips, and then you zoom it out from 2000 to 2020, and the dip, it's definitely a dip like it is here, but it becomes more like a blip on the radar as far as our activity. And so it's pretty interesting to kind of see this just continue to rise as people are still looking for a new place to live. So now we're gonna, that's kind of our, what we normally go through. So now we're gonna talk about a couple of the seasonal trends versus 2020 trends. And a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory. It's really just what we're seeing in data this year versus last year. And I think there's some interesting stuff to look at. So for starters, just talking about seasonality in multifamily housing, I think everyone knows this on a fundamental level, but obviously peak leasing happens in the late spring and the summer. And then there's another kind of uptick at the end of the year. Just people move when kids are out of school and stuff like that, and warmer weather. But because of that, there's pretty big fluctuations in where you should be allocating money. For instance, the cost per click on a paid search ad in the summertime is going to be 25 more expensive in winter than it is in the summer. And the reason for that is summer, there's so much search available that there's a huge opportunity to get more clicks for less money versus in the wintertime, there's so few searches and everyone's fighting for those that the cost goes up, as it does in an auction. So it's definitely beneficial to understand how the seasonality works, as I know you all I'm sure do, but and how it pertains to your marketing mix and how you can best set yourself up for future success. So typical trends that we see is on display and social. It's all about the demand that's available with how many people are on these platforms. And so the more people are on the platforms, the more demand there is. But the more advertisers that show up, the prices actually increase. And so when you look at CPMs on display and social, they kind of just track throughout the year on an upward trajectory, because it's really more around holiday is where the ads are most expensive versus on because it's not necessarily demand driven as far as people actively searching. It's more about what's happening in the market, the overall market outside of multifamily. Versus on paid search, we can see the supply and the demand curve a lot closer. The seasonal rise and fall, you can see a big decrease there in July, and then it starts to rise back up. And it kind of oscillates throughout the year as things change, but there's definitely an uptick and a downtick. And then the same thing we see on conversions. Conversions, definitely peak up in the summertime. That's when people are applying. That's when people are calling communities. Hey, I want to come take a tour. We do, obviously we know that people are searching long before it comes time to actually make a conversion. They are making conversions along the way, obviously, as you see here. But the peak definitely happens in the summertime. And so the 2020 is interesting in that it really kind of pushed things off the typical track that we normally see during this time. And it almost brought summer leasing type environments here sooner than before. And so typically, we see this kind of like ramp as far as when we see, actually, I guess it's a ramp down on Google CPCs dropping as it relates to the availability of impressions out there in the market. But what we saw is that it actually sort of brought those summer prices early. And so over the last few weeks, we've actually benefited from getting more action than ever before, more impressions, clicks for the same amount of dollars than ever before. And we probably will ever see again, just because of the way that there was so many people pulling out of advertising. And so for those that stayed in, they were able to buy when things were on sale, essentially. And so you see that here. This is the typical cost trend of 2020, looking uh, versus 2019. And so you can see 2019 there in red, and then the 2020, the huge craters, and then they've actually started to pick back up. And I think, even over the last week or so, we've seen a big uptick again. And I think that, we don't know for sure what these lines will do in the future. They might, go higher and kind of normalize out, up here, or they might kind of just follow the 2019 trend, but they had a nice, dip there during the spring. And so basically what this means is that, with all these people pulling out, we got airlines that are no longer marketing, hotels. There's just a lot more available inventory, which allows us to get more bang for the buck. And so seasonality is definitely still trending similarly. People are obviously doesn't change their move date as long as they're looking to still move and not just stay where they're at. I know that renewals are up to some degree across the board at most communities, but it's definitely an interesting dip that we saw as people kind of pulled back, and those that remained were able to see additional performance that normally you wouldn't see during this time of year. And the same thing we saw in search. And so what was kind of interesting is right when COVID was at its max, you can see there's a spike here where there was everyone sort of pulled back, and they stopped searching for apartments because people were so it was kind of during the kind of early stages of the crisis. And so because of that, way less searches, skyrocket CPCs. And then as we saw communities kind of throttle back, specific communities here and there, they might, they turn down their spending because they were worried about the leasing market, or maybe they, if they didn't collect their rent well, they might have had to pull back their ad spend. And so that kind of dropped the overall cost per click. Here, this is 2020 compared to 2019. You can see it dropped harder than it has in years past. And so now communities continue to hold back spend, but apartment seekers have re-entered the market. And so right now, we're really seeing that with a lot cheaper CPCs. And they actually remain lower than they have last year, which, if you know anything about Google, nothing is ever cheaper the year before. It always gets more expensive, and that's how their stock price continues to go like that, is because you never get to get things cheaper than they were before with Google usually. But with sort of this unique circumstance we're in, we're actually seeing the CPCs remain low. And again, we don't, we can only project out what we think will happen. My guess is it'll follow a pretty typical curve, and it'll start to pick back up. It also could, as people realize, hey, this is the time to make hay, regardless of all the things that are happening around. You still have to do what you can to try and lease up your community and let the people that are searching for apartments find yours. And so we might see this uptick sharper to get back closer to a typical trend line. But my guess is it'll probably, translate up a little bit slower and maybe, get back to the typical 2019 CPC probably in August. And it probably will end up being a little bit higher than we saw last year, just because that's usually how Google likes to do things. This is an interesting chart showing 2020 conversions versus 2019. So we superimpose these lines to kind of line them up a little bit better because the 2020, we have so much more data in 2020 than we did in 2019, that the whole blue line would be way higher across the board. But we wanted to kind of show, compare it to what we saw last year, so that we could get kind of a good sense of what at least a direct comparison would look like, provided it was 100% apples to apples with the exact same amount of data points. Obviously, with it's hard to get the direct comparison, but this is as close as we could get. And so what's interesting is you kind of see, overall goal completions are high, and then you see this giant, cliff. Obviously, we know what that is. And then what's interesting is the very rapid increase. And you can see here, there's sort of this slow, the slow ramp up and then slow ramp down. And what's interesting is that, like I said before, alluded to before, is like, it's almost like summer hit early, where all of a sudden, things just started skyrocketing, and we see things, pop up and actually go higher than they've ever been before as far as a online conversion per, per property or per community, just because that's, it's obvious. That's the only way that people convert, or that they can convert right now. And so, again, heading into sort of peak summer, you can see this dipping a little bit. My guess is it'll probably stay high, and then, it's going to follow. This will probably follow a typical trend even closer than some of the other ones, just because it's not necessarily driven by, supply and demand of Google cost per click or anything like that, but really more of when people's leases are actually up. And regardless of what's going on, people's lease dates are still their lease dates. If people decide to tack on a month to month, because they're not quite ready to move, but they still do want to, we could actually see an extended leasing season that kind of stays elevated through the summer, as people maybe don't feel comfortable moving right now at the end of June, but they might at the end of July or at the end of August or something like that. And so that'll be interesting to watch as we head through summer is, do we still see the same peak and valley, or do we have more people deciding that they want to maybe stay a month or two, and then this line ends up staying elevated for longer before dropping down into the typical range we see in the fall and the winter. So that is all the data we have for you, kind of showing what we see year over year. I hope it was helpful. It's definitely interesting to kind of see the way that the supply and demand curves have changed across tons of industries, and especially with multifamily with such a long buying cycle. It's, like I said, it's almost like the behaviors that were happening. It was like summer came early almost. And I know that it's, the leasing velocity heading into summer is hopefully remaining relatively high for many of you. Yeah, it's just definitely some interesting things that we're seeing versus years prior. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video, kick it over to Joe, who's going to be talking about, let's see here, who's going to be going through our capitalizing on new trends and what to do to help thrive during this time.
All right, give me a second. My internet is a little unstable. I'm gonna keep my video off. It doesn't seem like it wants to play too nicely with me. Let me back up. All right, I've got it now, Andrew. Thank you so much. And really great trends there, obviously, and what we're seeing in the marketplace. So it is time to now take a look at, how can we capitalize on those trends? So I think there's a few things we need to think about, and obviously now is definitely the time to act. There are big changes that have happened, and there are some big opportunities. As Andrew said, there's different things that are happening in the marketplace that have affected, conversions. And I think it's important that we take a look at the differences between a community maybe that's looking for a little more prominence, or someone that's looking at a little more conversions. So if we talked about the first strategy and we look at our prominence situation, obviously, as Andrew mentioned, the low CPMs that are out there, but much more awareness. This is where you can really drive awareness at this point, because the fractional cost is so low. Take a look at your display ads, what you're doing on Facebook and Instagram. And from an awareness standpoint, these campaigns can really, really have a great impact. Not only as, for your building, but, your occupancy as well as your conversions. But it's important that if you're looking for this type of prominence, those types of services, the campaigns that you can do out there right now, these types of awareness campaigns are really important. So it's important to really stress that bang for your buck. You're going to get a lot more for what you've done before. And that's because of the low CPMs. But you're also seeing so many people on these systems right now that, or, these tools out there that, you're going to really be able to capture a lot more than what you've been able to do before. So really it's reaching a larger share of apartment seekers. And that's important, right now, if you're looking from a prominent standpoint. If you're looking at conversions, it's all about staying out in front. So it comes down to retargeting. I love retargeting. I think it's a great way to really stay in front of those consumers that have been looking for the last couple of months. And, as they're going along, they're looking now to start making that conversion, if you will, to really take that next step. So, retargeting is so important. And this usually is really better for a community that, really has already a lot of high traffic already. But now it's time to really start converting them. So, you need to look at different conversion tools that are out there and making it really seamless to the community, to that user that wants to really start taking action. So I want to share with you a number of different products, for instance, that we have to give you an idea. One in particular is all about scheduling appointments. So obviously our Schedule Genie is available, but making it easier for someone to actually take that step to schedule an appointment. It's never more important than trying to capture that person and really, now you've got them to really take action. And getting them there is about promoting offers. So take a look at, we have a tool called Concession Manager. You can look at answering questions throughout their journey, for instance, with Call Chatter. And obviously an income calculator is always very important to have because people are ready to make decisions. If they are, you need to be able to respond really quickly. And I think that goes to, all of the tools that you could put out there. And the more opportunities you have to make it a little more seamless for them to really take that next step, especially if you already have the traffic, you've got to make sure that you have all those tools in place. Some tips that we can talk about. It's all about leasing now and leasing today, as they say. Learn more has been great for the last couple of months, but now it's summer. Summer's here. People are taking that next step. You've got to make sure you're saying, hey, lease today. Here are some examples that we've seen a lot out there. $1,000 off if you move in. No longer, click here, learn more for $1,000. It's move in. Receive $500 to move in towards your costs. Or maybe lease now and save $1,500. It's very important that these type of call to actions are put out there because now is the time people are really taking that next step, and you want to make sure you're really harnessing that while you have them on your site. One of the tips here is really interesting that I thought we were up is that avoiding expiration dates, and what that means is don't put an offer out there that says it ends this Friday, or, you have this weekend to do, and then it ends on Monday, whatever the date might be. That will be very challenging for you to manage going forward with all those different opportunities, different locations and different dates. So it is, we've seen a lot of customers that have opted for, by the end of the month. Using that type of term still drives that sense of urgency, but it doesn't become as labor intensive to really keep an eye on that. And of course, obviously your outdoor amenities are very important. Featuring pools and outdoor spaces are so important today, especially with social distancing. But we actually did a study here at Conversion Logics where, we were able to, poll and take a look at all of the different social media ads that we had out there. And those ads and those impressions that showed a swimming pool, for instance, in this case, a pool, obviously, fared that much better. And the study really showed that, people really responded more to that type of visual right now as we're going into summer than anything else. So see how that fits within your platform. And you might want to start taking a look at those different opportunities to add some photos like that, especially when it comes to, social distancing. I think we all know what's going on these days. And so when it comes to taking those photos or putting those photos out there, you want to make sure that you also don't have photos that have, 20 people in the pool or 20 people sitting around a restaurant table. Take a look at your photos and make sure that you're being respectful of what type of social distancing is going on out there to make sure you're not really, offending anyone that might be, looking at this as a negative. And of course, continue to communicate. Obviously, informing your prospects, there are multiple options to keep in touch with them. We've talked about retargeting. There's different things you can do. But really, when it comes down to it, it's your ad messaging. These three particular examples really show the importance that that is placed on ad messaging. Immediate move-ins available. Schedule your live or virtual tour, now, for instance. Flexible tour options. It's very important to have those types of communication messaging out there because, people are making that decision now. And you want to make sure that you continue to communicate through this time because you really have such a large audience out there and a lot less distractions that, really could move that needle for you. So let's take a look at some of the takeaways that we've talked about today. Obviously, decrease in competition for search, display, social ads have created prime opportunities to reach and convert more prospects. Huge, huge opportunities there. Ensure that you have those tools in place that we talked about. You're doing all this to get people. You've been retargeting them. You've been pushing them for months. You've been getting them there. But when they get there and they go to make that decision, where are those tools that make them, take that next step? That's so important to really realize that is, that's your opportunity there to move them to the next call to action. And of course, prioritizing those CTAs is really what it's all about. What are those call to actions to really make them to make a decision? And having flexible options is what we've just talked about during their leasing process. Couldn't be more important. So, when you really look at all the past opportunities that we've talked about, there are a number of different opportunities you can still do today to take action. And given the sense of urgency now that we're into summer, as Andrew said, summer's not coming, it's here. And with everything moving in that direction, now is the time to act. And you've got a great opportunity, and the cost of entry is a lot less than what it was. Given the CPMs that are down and the awareness, I think it's really, a great opportunity to take advantage of some of these strategies. So really some of the next steps that we are recommending, obviously, evaluating your marketing tools. Look at are you in a situation where you're looking for more prominence, or are you looking for more conversions? Is it about awareness or is it about conversions? Where are you in that path? Certainly reach out to our team. We've got a great, team of specialists that can work with you one-on-one for, to really evaluate your situations. And obviously, you can always go to our website. We've got a number of different opportunities to share with you there. All of our past webinars have been there to also share. So, we're here to help. And I couldn't be more pleased that we had this opportunity today to share this with you. And I'm going to turn this back to Andrew to talk about our next webinar, and then go into some questions. Andrew?
All right. Let me take control back here. Thanks, Joe, for running through those things. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff to take away. And one of the questions that has come through already is how does this affect senior living versus multifamily? And what's interesting is that senior living has basically tracked very similarly, but has not been as severe of a drop off or a climb. It's I think because of the much longer buying cycle for senior living, and it's not something that kind of happens. Oh yeah, every year I'm going to go move, or every couple years I move. It's a little bit of a slower term decision. So we actually did not see a huge cliff that fell off for online actions or anything like that. We did see obviously the same benefit of people leaving the market and getting lower CPCs and things like that. But as far as consumer activity, it remained pretty much the same. And then we've seen obviously a similar seasonality trend that we would see for multifamily, just less severe. So going into what we're seeing for this next webinar, it's going to be on live chat. So there's we have a live chat service, and I know that a lot of businesses and communities use, some of them use live chat. The other ones might use something like a chat bot. And there's some interesting stats that we are going to run through, kind of talking about, hey, what's the difference? What are the main differences between using something like a chat bot and using a live chat, with a person behind the keyboard? What are the positives and the negatives of each one? And then, and really how you can shape your chats to try and drive more leads. It's not just about, responding to a chat. It's about kind of cultivating through that chat to try and turn that some person into a lead, and really, having that live chat product become an extension of your sales team, which is really where the power is at. And so we're excited for the June 17th webinar. So questions, one of the questions that came through was lots of pools are not open yet. What would the next best photo be? You can use, you can use whatever photo you want. As far as in the study that we did, pools were the only one that actually statistically outperformed other photos. There wasn't any big significance between anything else. Pools were really the only ones that showed a marked increase in performance. And I definitely understand that pools are not open yet at a lot of communities, but one of the things to remember is that those amenities are still one of the reasons that people choose your community over another one. Even if they're closed right now, they will be open at some point. And so those are the kind of the things that help your community stand out. And so if you have, especially something unique, it might be a way to really help drive and then drive performance. And then, it also doesn't have to be necessarily just a pool shot. You can also do sort of a pool into the building shot or something like that. So that way you can get the benefit of kind of showing your outdoor amenity space along with your building as well. Any other questions? Just as a reminder, we're going to send out the recording and the slides for this after the fact. So you'll be able to take a look or share them or rewatch them. And there's definitely some interesting data to take a look at. We'll wait for another minute or so for some more questions to come in. All right. Well, not seeing a lot of questions come through, but anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I know it's kind of crazy times out there, and we just hope you all are staying safe. If you have any questions, like Joe mentioned, you can go to our website, schedule a little speed date where we can walk through kind of some of the things that you're doing, and we can give you some tips on how to kind of capitalize on this summer season as we're rapidly kind of in it and approaching it. I wish you all the best, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks for our next webinar. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Joe, have a great one. I'll talk to you soon.
You too, Mr. Andrew. Have a good one.
All right. Bye now.
Thank you.